Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Late Saturday night, Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama Crimson Tide continue the traction in the transfer portal, landing the number one center in the transfer portal, former Washington center Parker Brailsford. And Dill, this is one of the better centers in the entire country, was phenomenal for the Washington Huskies in 2023. Two things that really stand out. One, massive gap at the center position, a guy that actually can snap the football, phenomenal in pass protection, and 6'2", 275. This is a guy that plays much bigger than his weight might imply. And what excites me the most is I think he's just scratching the surface of what kind of center he can be at the college level and eventually in the NFL. And this was a guy as a redshirt freshman, was clearly playing underweight, still played phenomenally well. What happens when he gets to 290, 295? That's what excites me the most. And you're seeing Kalen DeBoer get his guys for this offense, and that's probably what Alabama fans should be most excited for. You bring in Kalen DeBoer to run that offense we saw at the Washington Huskies. I think Nick Saban wanted a guy like Kalen DeBoer because he sees the future of where college football is going. Really big pickup. Want to get into it, talk a little bit about how Kalen DeBoer is structuring this roster. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys. And this has been a program that we're going to be talking a lot about over the next couple of weeks as Kalen DeBoer continues to kind of put in work with this program and getting this roster right heading into 2024. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm going to give you the T-Box, one of your personal favorites from the Washington Huskies, Parker Brailsford, heading to Alabama. How are we feeling?
Yeah, and I feel like this is the guy I feel like when we were talking, Washington can't hang with Texas. Texas too physical, blah, 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 blah. Look at the center. He's only 275 pounds. I mean, he stood tall in that game. You kind of saw him going toe-to-toe with Sweat and Murphy and some of those dogs that Texas had in the middle. Alabama knows those guys were obviously very good from their experience dealing with the Horns. And he did his thing. I mean, he didn't look out of place at all. Physically looked fine with him. But at the end of the day, what Brailsford really specializes in is he is a great athlete at that center position, really good in more of that open offense, being able to get to guys at the second level in screens, in hit moving targets. So that's really his bread and butter. But again, that's to say, don't be deceived. I mean, he can got it out in the mud too. He's a physical player for that weight.
And I'm the idiot there, standing up there and saying Texas is going to run through this interior offensive line, really just calling out Parker Brailsford for being too small, not big enough to handle Texas up front, and he proved me wrong. I mean, he did a phenomenal job, and I'll tell you this, if you can stand up to Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and hold your own against those guys, like, you're not going to see a defensive lineman in the SEC that's bringing it more than those two. Parker Brailsford proved me wrong, proved a lot of people wrong, but you said it best, and this is kind of getting into the conversation we want to have. I mean, Parker Brailsford is a phenomenal athlete and fits what Kalen DeBoer wants to do on offense exceptionally well. One, great in pass for 612 pass for opportunities, only gave up one sack, 14 pressures, anchors down really well. But when you see him run blocking, and this was one of the problems that Alabama had on this offensive line, they had some big dudes that could reestablish the line of scrimmage. One of the things you saw them struggle with is they're very big. When they got to the second level, they struggled to pick up linebackers. Parker Brailsford, that's what he excels in. I mean, this is a guy that is a phenomenal athlete. You said it can hit moving targets. I mean, it's going to be funny seeing Parker Brailsford next to a guy like Tyler Booker, but you're going to see them work together relatively well. Like those double teams, Parker Brailsford working up to linebackers. I can see that group having a lot of success on the inside, but getting more to the conversation we want to have. And that is what Kalen DeBoer is going to do with this roster at Alabama. And there are a lot of people that are critical of what Kalen DeBoer can do on the recruiting trail. And I'll be hand up. Like, that is one of my questions about the hire of Kalen DeBoer. Is Kenny Bain with Kirby Smart and Hugh Freeze on the recruiting trail? I'll say this. And I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be extremely calculated in terms of who he goes after on the recruiting trail. I mean, this is an offense that has kind of a specialty in terms of what they want to do. They want to operate in space, and he's going to go get guys that fit his offense. Parker Brailsford, I think, really represents kind of what they want to do in terms of playing in space, being athletic. I'm very excited to see where Kalen DeBoer goes in terms of structuring this roster for Alabama moving forward in the 2024 season and his tenure down in Tuscaloosa.
Well, and that's where I think it gets interesting because you even saw Nick Saban start to try to modernize the Alabama program, at least on the offensive side of the ball, bringing in Kiffin and then Sarkisian. But the issue was I felt like it was a little dependent on those two. And when those two were gone and it went to Bill O'Brien, you kind of saw it dip a little bit. And he just didn't have that kind of magic that they had. And frankly, that Coach DeBoer has. I mean, he's got that ability to really scheme up an offense, call plays, even when he might be down a little bit on talent versus other teams. His scheme punches above his weight. And that's where I think it gets interesting because, again, you've kind of always seen Alabama's gone, well, we can just get better offensive line and better running backs, better wide receivers, and we can just kind of run a more standard offense. And that's obviously somewhat what they went back to this year. But I think you're kind of right. He knows that, or Nick Saban, I think when he was looking out, knows to score a lot of points. You got to kind of do it the way DeBoer has done it and Ryan Grubbs has done it for their career. And that's where I think it gets interesting is how much we kind of see, does he meld this offense into kind of the Alabama style, or does he really just make it his own?
I think we've talked about this not on air, but like Nick Saban, he had a heavy hand in who they were going out and hiring. Why do you think he wanted a guy like Kalen DeBoer? Because Nick Saban, why did he have so much success at Alabama for so many years? There's nobody that saw the future of college football better than him. There's nobody that could adapt to the sport continually better than Nick Saban. And I think he sees where college football is going, and that is being dynamic on offense, being able to operate in space, attack all portions of the field. That's Kalen DeBoer's offense. And so when they come to Nick Saban and say, hey, all right, you're retiring, who do you think would be the best candidate to take over Alabama? He says, what they're running out there in Seattle, Washington, that's the kind of offense we want to be running in Tuscaloosa. So I think you bring in Kalen DeBoer. I don't think you see him try to meld this offense into what you've seen Alabama the last 2 years. He's going to come in and run his offense. And I think what excites you the most is Kalen DeBoer. You said it always, if this is a home run hire, I mean, Kalen DeBoer is one of the best X's and O's coaches in the entire country. But if he can recruit at the level Nick Saban was, or even really close to the level Nick Saban was, that's what's going to make it a home run hire. If you can bring in that top talent that fits your scheme, if you're an Alabama fan, I mean, that's a match made in heaven, I think, for this Alabama program.
Yeah, because again, I think you're kind of right. I mean, you'll probably see him recruit different guys, especially on that offensive line. You might start seeing it look a little bit more like Parker Brailsford, not that offensive line that's going to go out there where everyone's, what was like the stat? They were all like
360.
Nice. There was some like number I know they were hitting. That might not be the same, but again, at the end of the day for DeBoer, it's going to be get guys who can play in space on the offensive line at that wideout spot. And frankly, the one thing that DeBoer's been missing for most of his career is defense, because you just can't really out-scheme defense. At the end of the day, you need really good players if you want to play really good defense. So that's kind of what I think you'll be looking for is, again, you're probably right. He'll probably play offense the way he's always played offense, because why wouldn't you? He's always been really good on offense. But he will. I think that's where kind of if he really kills it, it'll be he's plays his game on offense, but he'll have a defense with that talent that you need to play really good defense.
And what I would caution Alabama fans, and it's so easy, and I'm guilty, Michigan fan, guilty of looking at the recruiting rankings and kind of wrapping the success of a coach based on what 24/7 Sports tells me to evaluate these players. You might see a little bit of a divergence in terms of what they're getting and how they're evaluated by 24/7 Sports, because I mean, Kalen DeBoer wants to run an offense with his specific personnel. So he might not be going after the number one offensive tackle according to 24/7 Sports, because he thinks the number 10 offensive tackle in the country better fits what he wants to do on the offensive side of the football. And you could probably apply that to most position groups on the offensive side of the football. So if you're Alabama and you're the fans, like, I get it's easy, and I'm not getting up here and telling you recruiting doesn't matter, because Kalen DeBoer needs to recruit well to win at Alabama. That is a prerequisite of winning in the SEC. But when you see him construct his offense, it might look different from years past. But from what we've learned with Kalen DeBoer at Washington,
you got to trust him because he knows what he's doing.
You trust that process. And so that's what's most exciting. And again,
Brailsford doesn't on the surface, he doesn't give you the same feel as a Caden Proctor, perhaps. I mean, he doesn't have that like outward physical trait. Oh, this guy is a top 5 offensive
He was a 3-star coming out of high school for a reason, right? He was 6'2", 265 pounds coming out of high school. Like, that is not normally the prototypical 5-star that Alabama's trying to get on the offensive line, but he comes into Washington, redshirts a year, and then is an all Pac-12 performer as a redshirt freshman. And so it might look different, but these players coming in, you kind of got to trust Kalen DeBoer on the offensive side of the football to get it going. Now, on defense, you still want to see how Nick Saban recruits. And that's what you're kind of talking about. I'm really excited. Like, this is a very exciting time for Alabama. Obviously, uncharted waters, if you will. We'll continue to cover it, break it down. Appreciate the Alabama fans rocking with the fellas. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll continue the updates as they roll in. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.